Good evening, all. Thank you for a couple of minutes off our schedule. Tonight's informational is being presented by Kevin Brown, President of NCDC. Kevin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Just from the jump, I want to make sure that you understand that joining me and presenting as well tonight are Adam Bowles, the pastor from Castle Church, and Matt Rosen, the Assistant Director of the Yale Urban Design Workshop. Before they get into the real central theme and purpose for this informational, let me just draw some context around it and tee it up. You all know that we have been aggressively pursuing the Community Investment Fund 2030 grant opportunities as a city, either the city applying or NCDC applying for a number of different projects. In round two, we actually submitted an application to improve or enhance the look feel of Lower Broadway. Things have evolved over time. Some things have evolved of their own accord, some we have directed and pushed forward, and different partnerships have come into play that have made the Lower Broadway project of old become much more compelling as we approach CIF round number 5, which has an application submission due date of June 14th or 21st, I forget, of this year. I lay all that out for you because typically, as we've moved along this CIF path, we've been hustling to get to the finish line with the next thing running. And what we're trying to do this time around is tee this up with enough runway that we can have some interaction about the concept and the application to make sure that when we turn it in what is about 4.5 months from now, we know that we've had the community conversation, we've had the conversation with you as the seated city council, and that we've had time to move forward to get to 30% design documents before we turn it in, which is another compelling factor for these applications. So that's the larger context of this, but as Adam and Matt will talk you through, this has been underway conceptually based on an inspiration that Adam had a couple of years ago for going on 3 years. So we stand here before you tonight with some Yale urban design work that has been done over the past year plus, but a project that has been in everybody's mind for some time. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Pastor Adam Bowles from Castle Church to describe that inspiration to you, please, Adam.
Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Adam, pastor at Castle Church, and we opened our very first service in June 2019. Leading up to the renovation of that, we had our eye on this adjacent lot that was really run down. And originally, the idea was to take something that was really run down and use it for the benefit of our church. Just maybe spruce it up, get some picnic tables, and go from there. But very quickly we realized, with its location at a key intersection in the city, that this would be something that would be better for not just the church, but for the community. So we got to working on that, and it goes with our vision as a faith-based community. We really take inspiration from turning broken places into something beautiful, and how that can have an impact on the community, and how that can inspire, which is another part of our passion, is community connection. We really wanted to see a safe place where people could come together, have some conversations, and it would liven up the downtown and reach our neighbors. And so we got to work on that. We opened up, as I said, in June 2019. It's our first Sunday service. Our motto was nevertheless, and to us, that motto represented the idea of resilience. Resilience became a big theme during COVID. We saw what was happening among even our own people at the church, and people who were longing for that human connection. We felt more and more passionate about providing a space that would be a benefit to the city. And we, in Juneteenth 2020, launched Next Day Mercy. That's a ministry at Castle Church that has a long-term focus on racial reconciliation. And I say that to try to convey some of the inspiration that led up to the mural that you now see at Jubilee Park. The mural features two local Black history figures, and with the theme of resilience. Each of their stories find to be an inspirational story for the city. And so we continued to go down that path. We thought that the very first phase from reactivating this property, this blighted property, would be to do and to start with this mural. So June 18th, 2022, after a group of us, a small group of us, went down to Virginia and made our way back up through Philadelphia, we used the autobiography of James Lindsay Smith to approximate the journey he took to escape slavery in 1838. What we were doing was doing our own historical research to draw out the stories of the people that we were going to feature on this mural. After that, we engaged with Ben, one of the muralists that we had talked to several of them. We ended up with Ben Keller. And Ben Keller had done some racial justice murals, and we thought he was the right person for this particular project at Jubilee. So the day we get back from this journey, he started to do and worked on this mural. It took him about a month or more. And on June 18th, 2022, we had 150 people, several of you that were in attendance as well, for the unveiling of the mural on the south facade of our building there. And it really jump-started a lot of the interest seemed to grow out of having this space begin to look beautiful. Now, meanwhile, the church has seen that space be used for all types of things, even on a smaller scale. It's a place where we've offered refreshments during parades, St. Patrick's Day. The very first event we did as a church family was for Winterfest parade, and we were out there in that space, and we got a greater vision for how many people actually can be in that place on Lower Broadway all at one time. Along the way, we reached out to the Yale Urban Design Workshop to talk about designing the park, and what appealed to us was their emphasis on community collaboration. So beyond our own congregation, we wanted to engage with other groups, and some of that's going to be explained in a bit, but we really valued the idea that this would be something that we invited people in to hear about some of their ideas, what would work best. And in our own church congregation right there in the city center, down the road here, we were getting a lot of feedback about how important this was to them to see this converted into a space that would be used, and a blessing, as we would say, to the city. There was certain milestones that we celebrated. January 11th, the mural got lit up at night for the first time. We began working closer and closer with Kevin from NCDC and appreciated his leadership and the way that he was helping us move forward. And the mural itself received an award, the Art for All Award, from the Connecticut chapter of the American Planning Association. That was December 16th, 2022. And it was getting good responses, as I said. We saw that even people on the street that we were talking to felt like, really, the big thing was they started to feel some hope for some turnaround in that spot. And we were appreciative of that. November 15th, 2023, so just recently, we concluded the work of the steering committee that had been ongoing for several months, and which is where we're going to pick it up. But actually, just before that, May 6, 2023, I would recommend for those of you who want to even know a little bit more layers to the story, our creative pastor, John O'Wibberley, produced the Jubilee Project documentary. It's on our website, castle.church. It's a 30-minute documentary that tells this story in greater detail, including the trip, including the inspiration for the mural, including why we were engaging the themes of resilience and how that all tied in. And that's available, as I said, on our website that you can check out. So we went through those months of conversations. had some surveys, saw the momentum build, lots of conversations right there on that site. In between handing out hot chocolate and popcorn and all the different things or the different events. From our perspective, from a church, it's been a really special place. There's been the parades, Winterfest parade is right there where they're judging all the vehicles that are going by. And there's been several other things. So we have seen that there's a lot of potential for this particular site. It's been exciting for us. Our church is really excited about any next steps that we can take. And we're looking forward to just, again, the biggest thing for us, our motive behind it all, is that there would be a place for people to have some real community connection. We know that we're facing a loneliness pandemic. We know that in city spaces, it benefits the city when there's some green space. And to engage them in this way, I think, is something that we found a lot of inspiration from. So the details of this, the work, and where we get to these, where we get to this model, where we get to, some of the color renderings of the concept design, all of that, I want to make sure that Matt takes most of the time to explain that. So thank you very much.
I'm going to call an audible. I want to make sure we back up and retell part of this story. And I have joked with Adam on a number of occasions and said to him, I am hijacking your inspiration. And I mean that. The fact that this story of Sarah Harris and James Lindsay Smith is now portrayed on a wall in our downtown is inspirational. And it should not miss anyone that we sit here tonight in the first seated council meeting of the month during Black History Month, and we're having this conversation about how we can use the inspiration of that mural to keep that momentum going down Broadway. And so recognizing this potential from that start point that Adam and the church created, he and I have had a sustained conversation about the public-private partnership. And make no mistake about it, I led off by telling you that we have 4.5 months till we have to turn in this application. One of the things we absolutely have to thread the needle or needle the thread, or however you put those two things together, is this public-private partnership. So do we have all the answers on that right now tonight? No, we don't. But my hope for this informational is that we talk inspirationally about what we want our inner downtown to look like. We speak with hope and are forward-looking about the value that space that Adam just described where people can commune is what we focus on, knowing that we're all smart enough to figure out how to dot the I's and cross the T's on how that public-private relationship has to be structured in order to do that in a way that's beneficial to the church, to the community, to everybody in Norwich. That's where we want to land between now and June 21st. Now, in the spirit of that hijacking that I described, this body approved ARP Code 48 monies, $50,000, to help move this study along by the Yale Urban Design Workshop in partnership with the property owner. So just to make it very clear that this has been a public-private pursuit and venture to get us to this point. And now at this point, I would like to turn it over to Matt to talk about the details.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Adam. My name is Matthew Rosen. I'm the Assistant Director of the Yale Urban Design Workshop. We're a kind of coalition of students and faculty at the School of Architecture at Yale who work with communities across Connecticut to create really beautiful and impactful public spaces. And tonight I'll be talking about Jubilee Park, a project that we've been working on for the better part of a year. You know the site. This is a photo of it not too long ago. It's between 4 and 24 Broadway. If we zoom out a little bit and we see the aerial view of this part of downtown Norwich, we can see there's a kind of missing tooth here, right? The site of Jubilee Park, highlighted here in white, is kind of void in an otherwise very dense and vibrant part of Lower Broadway. And if we look back at a 1914 Sanborn map, we can see that it wasn't always like this, that there was this beautiful postcard from 1910. You can see actually the buildings that were formerly occupying the site that we are now going to talk about. But somewhere between 1914 and the present day, there are these buildings were demolished, and the site now looks something like this. It's our suspicion that part of the building rubble that is forming the slope of the site are these old buildings that were kind of covered over. And so you actually get this very interesting urban condition. So in a historical downtown like the one you have here in Norwich, it's very rare actually to have this type of space, this open space with these really interesting views actually to these significant architectural features you have downtown. And even in this view right now, on the view to the northeast, you can see the former Delhoff Hotel, the kind of tan building on the left. And that building is going to be, not too long from now, housing 20 housing units. So 20 people will be living in that building. And on the right view, the southeast view, you can see down on Main Street, the Reed and Hughes building, which will be 17 new housing units. So directly in eyeshed to this site will be 37 new people living in this area. So the use of it as a park also has direct relationships to the people who will be living, the increased number of people who will be living here. And of course, we're building on the momentum that Adam highlighted so well, of taking the sort of side of Castle Church and painting this really beautiful mural of Sarah Harris Fayweather and James Lindsay Smith. So we were contacted to help continue that momentum, to help bring the vision and some of the energy into design, into form. And these are images from a community engagement event that we held on May 6th last year, in which we brought this model, not with the design plugged in, but with an existing plug of the site, the way it is now. And we asked people, what they wanted to see from the site. We got a really diverse group of people, really broad response, which was very interesting. And they wanted a really wide range of programs, stuff that went from, live music, community gathering spaces, a place to display art, a farmer's market, intergenerational programming, yoga, you name it. There was a really strong response and a really broad response to this space. And so when we started thinking about the design, we wanted to capture all of the energy of that Adam has brought and Castle Church and Kevin has brought to the project, but also think about how this space can be really flexible and adaptable and have a lot of simultaneous uses, because this is what we heard from the people who we were speaking with, that we wanted to have a place to gather and a place to, exercise and a place to see a movie. And so in the design, we really were looking for this type of flexibility. So this is a plan. The scheme that we're going to talk about tonight has 2 levels to it. This is a plan of the first level, which is at grade with Broadway. And you can see here in the bottom of the screen, I don't know if you can see the cursor. Yeah, you can. Great. That there's a pavilion right on the street. And that pavilion is really a multi-use space. It can be enclosed in the winter. We wanted to ensure that some public space was still usable in the winter months. It does get kind of cold in Connecticut. It also houses 3 bathrooms that could be for public use, storage, and an entry courtyard to an elevator that brings you up to the 2nd level. Accessibility was also very important to us. We wanted to ensure that even though Norwich has this incredible topography that we wanted to embrace and to use as actually a design feature in the park, we wanted to ensure that anyone could access both levels. So here we have an accessible elevator. Adjacent to this pavilion, right off of Broadway, is a large multi-use plaza. And this plaza is really just an open space that can be used really for events, for gatherings. You can imagine a food truck pulling in there and serving some food on a Saturday, or you can imagine a concert happening or someone playing guitar. So really a broad use in the plaza there. Once we come up to the 2nd level, we see part of the scheme, how it all kind of comes together. And right here between the plaza and the 2nd level of the park is an amphitheater. And the amphitheater is not only a way of getting from the 1st level, from Broadway up to the total height of the park, but it also provides seating potentially for performances, for city addresses, and for other types of communal gathering. One of the ideas of this space was that we really were interested in creating something which would speak to the history of Norwich, to kind of take parts of Norwich that we found really compelling, for instance, the topography and the kind of multi-levelness of this park, and also think about the present needs vis-a-vis the survey that we just showed, and think about the future, right? So how could this be flexible? How can it be adaptable for the future? The amphitheater in relation to the plaza could be used in really infinite ways. And so coming up here, we see the picnic lawn and a reflecting pool. And this is also a very interesting and unique condition. As we get back out from Broadway, the sound from the street is less, and so it gets a little bit quieter. And when you're back in the park, you can actually have a quiet moment. And this is really, really amazing for a downtown, bustling, vibrant area, right? To have a moment that's a little bit more quiet, that you can have a sort of intimate conversation or take a phone call in the middle of the day. You got an hour for lunch and you want to just unwind and eat your lunch in peace. You can come back here, and there's a shallow pool that you could sit by with a shading structure and sort of unwind in this sort of serene environment. And so the idea that we're creating spaces for large gatherings in the amphitheater, which could house up to 150 people just on the amphitheater steps alone, while creating spaces for intimate, quiet, sort of contemplative conversation, it's a real sort of density of possibility in this fairly small site. So here is a photograph of the model that you see before you in person. And you can see what I was sort of gesturing at here with the pavilion. So these pavilion doors, they can open and close. They can fully open and have events. We're also interested in bringing a lot of green and life to downtown. And so the railings and the banisters here, they're all planter boxes, and we can allow for plants to kind of come and occupy the streetscape. We were also really excited by the architecture, as I kind of alluded to here in downtown Norwich. And so we were really careful to align even the design, the architectural features, the heights of the pavilion and the ways things come together in order to gesture towards that rich history, while also keeping a kind of forward-looking, contemporary idea of what could be the future. So it's, again, this idea of looking back while also looking forward. One of the kind of perennial issues when it comes to building a public space is, of course, trying to maximize resources, right? We don't have infinite resources no matter what the project is, and so we really want to think about how can we make the most out of everything that we do on a site like this. And so here, looking more of an aerial at the proposal, you can see that having a small space, maybe back here under the shading structure by the reflecting pool, to just take a second and unwind in the middle of the day, that has real benefits for our mental health, or an individual's mental health, for the community. So the individual effects, or even just having some green space in an otherwise pretty dense urban place, these, like having plants, having trees, having a place to sit, these have real benefits to the community and to the individual. We're also really excited by the potential of this park to be a place for communities to gather and to meet. And so here you see an illustration of the proposal, sort of animated on a day where there's a food truck pulled in, someone's ordering food, people have tables and chairs out here, just sitting sort of by the street looking out. There's someone picnicking in the garden, even someone dipping their feet in the reflecting pool back here. Maybe a different day, there's a farmer's market, you have all of the pavilion doors open, and there's someone walking their dog up on the stairs here. The other point that's really important for us is the way that we're using this proposal, this park design, to make the most of this site. It's not the easiest site. It's got 3 facades that are going to be renovated or worked on, apart from the mural facade. And so the slope of the site, the scale of the site, it's a somewhat challenging thing. And so what we wanted to do is really maximize what was there, not to demolish it and just build whatever, but to be sensitive to the conditions and work with them to make the greatest outcome. And so this idea of having a small input, or taking something and then getting the most out of it, this was really important in the design of the site. We're also really thinking about how this site impacts the broader Lower Broadway district, and what putting care and attention into this site will do for the broader community as a signal, and also as just a space, as a community asset to be used. That it could potentially spur economic development, and the way that we could begin to program the site to energize and also provide assets to the community. So here's a view looking at the Delhoff Hotel. You can see the amphitheater stairs, the picnic lawn here, the reflecting pool. You can see back here is the exit for the accessible elevator. And this is one of these really beautiful shots of the image that probably you can't see because it's a little far, so we put it in here. But I mean, nowhere else apart from this site could you get these amazing views where you see these historic facades kind of collapsed and collaged together in space with a new green space in downtown. It's such an exciting possibility. And here we're looking at the adjacency between the new pavilion and the proposed amphitheater, and the way that potentially through the plaza there can just be a large gathering or even just a quiet moment. Here looking at Main Street on the angle, and you can see the way that the site steps back, the way that the actual topography works. It sort of embraces that topography and moves it forward. So these are colored renderings that take the model and start to think about the materiality, start to think about the way that that plants can come into the design and shade the structures. This is, as Kevin alluded to, part of a concept design, which is a very early part of the design process. So we're still working through what these all mean functionally, though we have a pretty good idea, I think, at this point, what the sort of gesture of the space could be. This is another view, again, looking at the pavilion and the amphitheater. You can imagine this entirely filled potentially on a day of celebration. And inside the pavilion, a place to maybe see a movie or just have a community meeting. And here, the final view I'll share tonight is a southern view from the reflection pool looking at the mural. And we see the green space, we see the mural, and literally a reflection pool, right? The idea that we're not only thinking about the past and projecting the past into the future, but also providing new, beautiful, and really useful spaces for the community here in Norwich. So with that, I will take any questions if you have it. Or should we? Let me wrap it. Okay, Kevin's got to wrap it up.
Very good. Thanks, Matt. Matt took about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes to tell you about something they've been working on for over a year. It's been a lot of work, a lot of inputs, and really a tremendous result. And a tremendous result that has been, as Adam pointed out, guided by a steering committee that had in its membership members of Hartford Healthcare, members of the city's planning office, representatives from NCDC, representatives from the church. I don't know who else I may have missed, but those are sort of the core elements to make sure that all along the way, folks that might have a different view of the world or a different perspective on what could or should be were able to be part of that early conversation. And the other thing I'd like to point out, and I don't think I can go back quickly enough, I'm not going to try, but that view that Matt showed you of how Reed and Hughes is in this view shed, and the former Delhoff Inn Fairhaven building that's now under new ownership is literally adjacent. We've talked over the past week or so about the energy behind the apartments that are going to go in above the old YMCA building, now known as 345 Crossings. There are about 100 plus new residential units. Water Street Lofts are just up the road this way from your model. All of these within about 300 feet, some adjacent to this space. And I think it provides an opportunity for the downtown to have, as Matt described, green space. A lot of folks think infill. What can we put there? Really what this city needs to consider is where can all these people that we're about to bring to live downtown, where can they go and commune and recreate and hang out? And within 350 feet, you're going to have 100 plus new residential opportunities in addition to the ones that already exist down here. So I think it is best placed as the kind of park that Matt described. And as he said, these are early concepts, and we've got to go somewhere from here. So you may recall, I couldn't tell you definitively, back on or about October, the city passed you all passed a resolution charging the city manager to be responsible for an Urban Act grant for Jubilee Park and Lower Broadway improvement in the amount of $500,000. So that money is now currently in staffing through Josh Pothier's office with OPM to ensure that we've met all the contractual needs to effectively and appropriately spend those monies. For the spending of those monies, we opened an RFP this month on January 19th, last month on January 19th. We received about 4 or 5 questions on that RFP from various vendors. We have 4 vendors that have shown an interest in being part of taking this thing from concept to full design. That selection must be made by the end of this month, on or about February 26th. And then from that point, we'll have a vehicle in place to do the actual design work of this concept and prepare us for getting to at least 30% design documents by that June 21st, 2024 CIF Round 5 application. Now, what hasn't been specifically called out in here, even though we've all kind of talked about it, is the fact that, as I said earlier, some of this has been purposefully nudged along. Some of it has just happened to come together. You all know that we have a new owner of the 3 portfolio buildings on Lower Broadway, the Fairhaven being one of them. And if you were to ask yourself what would be the optimal Community Investment Fund 2030 application, it would be one that says, we're going to address the urban heat index and the toxic stress of a busy downtown with blighted spaces. And we're going to do it by creating a place where they can commune and come together. And we're going to do it in a place where transit-oriented development with new residential units are adjacent to or within 350 feet. And that's what we're building here right now. And so that's what we're trying to move this application towards as we move to June. And I point that out because with these new partners on Lower Broadway that are looking to develop those 3 buildings, this Fairhaven building stands a chance in a CIF grant to be a component part of the ask. Not just funds to build out this conceptual park that you just saw, but the park and the residential unit as well. I've already stood on the street with representatives from DEEP and pointed this out to them. In fact, they were here to look at the Reed and Hughes building, and they said, what else can you show us? So I walked them right across the street and showed them this, and you could see their understanding as they wheeled and looked at the Reed and Hughes building that they've provided funding for in CIF Round 1, and then they saw this opportunity and realized we'd be coming back at them. So, you know, this is how I feel about it. I think things are coming together, and the real value of this brief to you tonight is so that you've got time over these next 120 to 140 days to ask questions, which I'll turn it over to you here in a second to do, and then provide us feedback as we try to keep moving forward. Beyond the application in June, the way most of these CIF awards have been rolling out, it's typically September, October before you learn, at which point we'd be able to move further, as you see on this timeline, into the actual selection of subs, final design, and then construction probably in the 2025 timeframe. That concludes our briefing, subject to any questions that you have of any of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you both for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to the other members quickly, but when we dedicated the first mural, Adam, you and I are up on top. The muralist joined us, and there was some discussion about a mural towards the back as well. In fact, he shared with us his idea. I look at the formation of this model. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this would limit any opportunity for a mural. Seem to be tuning in and out. If anybody could, Adam, perhaps you could comment on that. It's not a big item, but I remember his concept of what he would have put up on the thing, but I don't think this is intended to limit, and that's the only question I have.
Beginning with Ben, the hope was to do a second mural, but this was before we evolved to this point. And we're still in communication with them about the aesthetics as we move on, but that particular spot as it's designed now would be obscured. So it had just evolved away from that time that we had that conversation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Members of council, any questions?
I'm going to put a nicer picture up while you're asking questions. Timeline is not fun to look at.
Members, any questions?
I would like a ton.
What's that, Cynthia?
I'd like
Please,
that.
Alderman Gould.
Who would ultimately decide who gets to do what there?
Alderwoman Gould, that's, that's exactly what I've been alluding to, that we now have time to contemplate the answers to that question. Right now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you the answer. I can tell you that we have talked about it at length, but we absolutely have to structure this public-private partnership to ensure that the question you're asking can be answered on a daily or hourly or weekly or monthly basis, or an event-by-event basis. And any of those options are at play. There are some that probably make more sense from a liability and structuring standpoint for the city. There are others that probably make more sense for the church and its congregation, and let's be very clear, the private property owner. And then there's always the option that there's a land solution somewhere in between that cuts this apart or provides a different set of circumstances than the private ownership that it has today. We don't have any of those answers, but those are all the things we need to contemplate as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other members, questions at this time? Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate the timeline. It helps us as we move this forward. And there's plenty of opportunity for re-engagement here if you need it, and throughout the rest of the community. Let us know how we can help gain that community dialogue, because I know that's what you're looking for. That's what tonight was to launch. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin.